Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, in a quiet little village where the hills rolled like waves and the river whispered gently through the meadows, there lived a boy named Jack and his widowed mother, who worked tirelessly every single day to keep their tiny cottage standing and to find enough food to survive, even when the cupboards were nearly bare and the cold winds of winter knocked at their door. Jack was a kind-hearted boy with a restless spirit, always dreaming of adventures beyond the hills. But the harsh reality of their poverty weighed on his young shoulders, and the only treasure they owned was an old cow, gentle and patient, who gave milk each morning and seemed like part of the family, though even she was growing weaker with every passing season. One gray morning, as the fire burned low and their stomachs growled with hunger, Jack's mother sat down with tears in her eyes and told her son that the cow had stopped giving milk, that they had nothing left to sell, and that he must take their beloved cow to the village market. Andy tried to trade her for money or food, for otherwise they would starve before long. Jack, though saddened by the thought of losing the cow who had been his companion since he was small, agreed without complaint, because he loved his mother dearly and wanted to help. So he set off down the dusty road with the rope in his hand and the cow walking slowly behind him, her big brown eyes watching him with quiet trust. The day was warm, and the sun was hidden behind a haze of white clouds as Jack walked along the winding road, when suddenly he met a strange old man dressed in a cloak of many colors, his eyes twinkling like stars and his smile both kind and mysterious, as though he carried secrets no one else in the world could know. "Where are you taking that fine cow, my boy?" the man asked, his voice soft but commanding, and Jack explained politely that he was bringing the cow to market to sell, hoping to earn enough money to buy bread and firewood for his poor mother. The old man chuckled and shook his head, saying, "No, no, coins and bread will vanish in a day. But I have something better for you, 5 beans. Not ordinary beans, but magical ones, filled with wonders that will change your life forever, if only you are brave enough to plant them." Jack stared at the beans in the man's hand. They looked small and ordinary, yet somehow they shimmered faintly, almost as if they pulsed with light. And though his mind told him it was foolish, his heart whispered that this was destiny. So he agreed to the trade and handed over the rope of the cow, tucking the beans carefully into his pocket. When Jack arrived home and proudly showed his mother the beans, expecting her surprise and joy, she grew pale with anger and disappointment, scolding him for being so gullible and reckless, for giving away their only source of food in exchange for something that looked so worthless. And in her frustration she threw the beans out the window into the garden. That night, they went to bed hungry and hopeless, Jack staring up at the wooden beams above his bed and wondering if he had made a terrible mistake. While outside in the soil, something extraordinary was already beginning to stir, though neither Jack nor his mother could imagine the miracle waiting for them at dawn. In the stillness of the night, the beans sprouted, and by the time the moon was high, the stalks had grown taller than the cottage, their green stems twisting and curling upward into the sky. And as the stars watched silently, the beanstalk rose higher and higher, climbing beyond the clouds into a world unseen by human eyes. When the first light of morning broke through the curtains, Jack rushed outside to find the garden transformed, dominated by a gigantic beanstalk thicker than a tree, its leaves broad as sails and its vines stretching so far upward that they disappeared into the misty heavens above. Jack's mother trembled with fear at the sight, begging him not to climb, warning him that no good could come from such strange magic. But Jack's heart leapt with wonder and courage, and he knew deep inside that this was his chance for adventure, for something greater than the life of poverty he had always known. Without another word, Jack grasped the thick stalk, feeling its rough bark-like surface beneath his hands, and began to climb, higher and higher. His muscles straining, his heart pounding with excitement as the wind whipped around him and the ground below grew smaller and smaller. Up and up he went, past the rooftops of his village, past the hills and forests, past the very clouds themselves, until he broke into a world above the sky, where the air smelled fresh and strange, and where the land stretched endlessly, shimmering with golden light. In the distance, Jack saw something that made him stop in awe, a castle so vast and tall that its towers pierced the clouds, its walls shining as though made of pearl and stone. And he knew instantly that this was no ordinary place, but a realm of giants. Jack, trembling with both fear and excitement, crept toward the enormous doors of the castle, each carved with patterns larger than his whole body, and slipped inside through a crack, finding himself in a hall so large that its ceiling seemed higher than the tallest mountain he had ever seen. The tables were the size of houses, the chairs as tall as towers, and scattered across the great hall were treasures beyond imagination, sacks of golden coins spilling onto the floor, plates of silver gleaming in the dim light, and jewels that sparkled like frozen stars. But before Jack could take more than a few steps, the entire castle trembled with the sound of heavy footsteps, each one like a drumbeat of thunder. And then he heard a voice so loud it shook his bones. Fee, fee, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Jack froze, his heart leaping into his throat, and quickly darted behind a giant pot, peering out just enough to see the monstrous figure of a giant enter the hall, his eyes fierce, his teeth sharp, and his hands larger than Jack's whole body. The giant sniffed the air, his nostrils flaring, but after a moment he shrugged and stomped toward the table, dropping a heavy sack of gold coins with a crash that echoed through the hall, before settling into his chair. Soon, the giant's eyes drooped, and his massive head nodded forward as he drifted into a deep sleep, snoring so loudly that the chandeliers rattled, and Jack, seizing his chance, crept from his hiding place and grabbed a handful of the golden coins. His heart racing, Jack slipped out of the castle and ran as fast as he could back to the Beanstalk, climbing down with the coins jingling in his pockets, until at last he reached the ground and rushed to show his mother. His mother gasped in disbelief at the sight of real gold shining in her son's hands, and though she was relieved that he had brought wealth, she begged him never to climb again, fearing the danger above the clouds. But Jack could not forget the wonders he had seen, and his curiosity burned like fire inside him. So after a few days he returned to the Beanstalk, determined to climb once more and discover more secrets hidden in the giant's world. This time, Jack moved more carefully, slipping silently into the castle and hiding behind a barrel as the giant entered, carrying under his arm a strange bird with bronze feathers that shimmered like fire. Jack watched in amazement as the giant set the bird on the table and commanded, "Lay." And to his astonishment, the hen laid a perfect golden egg, round and gleaming, rolling gently across the wooden surface. The giant grunted in satisfaction, then soon fell asleep again, his snores booming through the hall like thunder, and Jack crept forward, gently taking the magical hen into his arms and hurrying away. Clutching the hen tightly, Jack climbed back down the Beanstalk, and when he showed his mother the bird's gift, she gasped as it laid another golden egg before her eyes, filling their home with hope and promise for the future. Yet even with gold coins and golden eggs, Jack's heart yearned for adventure. And one morning he decided to climb the Beanstalk a third time, convinced that something even greater awaited him in the castle above. Inside, Jack discovered a harp made of gold, its strings shimmering with light, and when he touched it, the harp began to play by itself, filling the air with the most enchanting music he had ever heard. But as soon as Jack lifted the harp into his arms, it cried out in a sweet, clear voice, "Master, Master!" And the giant stirred, his eyes snapping open with fury as he roared, "Fee, fee, fo, fum!" The giant leapt to his feet, shaking the castle with each step, and Jack ran for his life, clutching the harp as it continued to call out, its music turning into a cry that echoed through the halls. Jack scrambled out of the castle and onto the beanstalk, his heart hammering as he slid and climbed downward, while the giant thundered after him, the beanstalk swaying under his massive weight. "Mother, bring me an axe," Jack shouted as he neared the ground, and his mother, pale with fear, rushed to his side, handing him a heavy axe with trembling hands. With all his strength, Jack swung at the beanstalk, once, twice, 3 times, until the stalk cracked and groaned, and with a mighty crash, it toppled to the earth, bringing the giant down with it. The ground shook like an earthquake as the giant fell, and when the dust cleared, there was nothing left of him but silence, leaving Jack and his mother safe forever. From that day on, Jack and his mother lived in comfort, for the hen laid golden eggs whenever they needed, the harp filled their cottage with music, and the sack of coins ensured they never knew hunger again. But more than riches, Jack carried with him the lesson that courage, cleverness, and a daring heart could transform even the poorest boy into someone who reached the clouds. And that love for his mother was the greatest treasure of all. Each night, as the stars twinkled in the sky, Jack would remember the beanstalk, the castle in the clouds, and the adventures that had tested his courage. And he knew that even small people could do great things if they dared to climb. And so, Jack and his mother lived happily ever after, their days filled with laughter and warmth, their nights filled with music and dreams, and their hearts filled with gratitude for the magic that had changed their lives forever. The end.